Rules of reinforcement. So when it comes to reinforcement, we need to consider one thing. Is it reinforcing? Does it motivate? Um, we cannot assume toys to be fun just because it's a toy. And don't assume something is reinforcing just because someone told you to. With all of ABA, the one rule that we need to be is that we need to be analytical. We judge what we can observe. Now, we need to be observant even with reinforcement. So when I'm presenting toys or reinforcers for a student, I need to look and be observant. So let's say I put out an array of 3 to 5 items. What's the first item that my child chose to play with? How long did he play with it? Did he play with the toy appropriately? Is this kind of behavior consistent? The next time when I bring these toys out again, did he choose the same one again to be the first toy? So that would kind of give you an idea. Because if we provide reinforcement that's not motivating enough, the likelihood is the child would just revert back to the previous behavior that they were engaging because they found that to be more comfortable and rewarding, and therefore wouldn't make any necessary effort to make changes. Reinforcement must be contingent to rules. Um, when we have toys that we're giving as a reinforcer or snacks or activities, these need to be restricted in some sense as far as access go, meaning that they can't just have it anytime they want. Um, when we restrict the access, what we're really trying to do is to teach when they can get it. We're trying to establish the behaviors of which will earn them the reinforcement. And by restricting it, it makes it much more clear when it happens. Because if I have, let's say we're using an iPad, for example, if the student gets an iPad for every single correct answer when they're doing a session, let's say during a therapy session, but at the same time at home, the student is just getting an iPad non-contingently, meaning he can have it at any time. When we try to use the same reinforcer, the iPad, to use as a positive reinforcement, he may be satiated to the point where he doesn't care. So he may not be as compliant as he should be. So, restricting the accessibility is definitely a necessary tool that we need to use. Um, and lastly, we need to keep changing things and rotating things to keep the kids from getting bored. Um, we need to constantly rotate and also increase and diversify our students' interest. If you only have a few, right? And let's say once again it's iPad, electronics, and let's say these are the only things that the child finds motivating. And in time, eventually, he's going to get it fed to him so much, he's going to get bored, and he's going to reach a point of satiation where he might not even want to work for the iPad, and therefore we're right back at zero again. So there's definitely a need to rotate the toys and to constantly make changes to keep them from being satiated and bored. And also at the same time, what you can do is use toys to expand upon what he already likes. Now, other rule, we need to provide the reinforcement, just like feedback, immediate to the behavior, because we want them to associate the closest behavior with the reinforcement. So when we talk about ABC, once the A occurs and the B happens, the C needs to happen immediately. That cannot be any delay. Because if you delay it, you're potentially reinforcing inappropriate behaviors. And so we're trying to strengthen the connection between the behavior and the reinforcement. Now let's talk a little bit about bribing. I want to show the difference. Um, a lot of what we do right now is depend upon external reinforcement. For example, our kids are motivated by, like we talked about earlier, the snacks, the toys, and so on. But the way we're doing it is in a within a 3-term contingency. It's happening at the very end. We present the reinforcement when the behavior occurs. That way, the student understands I need to behave a certain way for me to earn that toy or food. Now, bribing works a little differently, and you know, I'm sure everyone's been, guilty of doing something similar, where you actually present. Let's say I have my phone. My phone is the it's a reinforcement, and I have a student that's just not complying. Or maybe I'm a parent and my son is sort of crying and so forth. And I'm saying to him, hey, you know what? Stop crying. Okay, stop crying. You know what? Here's the phone. If you stop crying, I'll give you the phone. Now, this type of reinforcement is a little different because the reinforcement itself didn't come after the behavior occurrence. It happened at the A. It happened actually as part of the antecedent, meaning I bring out the reinforcement, at which point, paired with the antecedent, cause the behavior change. Now, of course, at the end, you still get the phone, but when we're doing this, we're conditioning the kids to only respond if the reinforcement is shown, is negotiated beforehand, and meaning you could never fade this out because once you fade it out, I bring out the phone, I tell you to do something, you do. I bring out the phone and tell you to do something, you do. Now, at which point when I fade out the phone, because you've been conditioned to only respond to the condition of the reinforcement being before the behavior, you no longer be compliant. So definitely bribing is something that we do not do with an ABA, or we try our best not to. I mean, it's highly, advised against.